What is up, Chris? How you
How
doing,
you
man?
doing, man? Hey Nick, I'm good. How are you, man?
Doing well, thank you much. Thank you everyone for joining the stream today. YouTube and Facebook. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you're calling in from today. Today we're going to be talking about favorite distortion models, right, Chris?
Yeah, we are. So we're gonna cover a lot of ground today. I bet with both our selections, I bet we'll be able to cover probably most of the spectrum, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree for sure. So I'm sure some of the viewers may be thinking like, well, hey, you guys just had an update, and so that update kind of snuck up on us, so we're just kind of rolling with the subject that we landed on. And so I'm sure maybe you and Tony could talk about the 3.6 update. I know we had a couple new amps, a handful of new cabinets, and then a couple effects. So I think the biggest takeaway from this update is the Grammatico amp, and so maybe you guys could dive into that. One thing I will say, the new amp model, the Elmsley, is really cool. It has a lot of different voicing capabilities. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm probably just going to take a little bit more of a backseat approach. I have a couple presets ready to go if we have any back and forth we want to do. But I'll probably take a little bit of a backseat on this one, Chris. Let
Awesome.
you handle it, and then kind of like we did last time, as questions come in, I could throw those up on the screen, and you and I can, take them as they come. But without further ado, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you, and let's see what favorites you have in store for us today.
Awesome. Well, I'm just going to switch views so you guys can see HX Edit. So hope everyone's doing well. My first selection for our favorite distortions would be the Ampeg Scrambler. So most of you guys will think, well, it's a bass overdrive. How is a guitar guy going to use that kind of pedal? But it's not really because it's meant for bass that it won't work with guitar, right? So here is my bass preset without the overdrive engaged. So I'm running on the Cali, Texas. It's going to be not exactly clean, but not super overdriven. So here you go. So that's, well, it's got a bit of hair to it, but it's not high gain for sure. And if I were to engage the scrambler, so I'm just going to play again with my bass tone, then switch it on. So what's it going to do? It's just going to add a bit of gain, but I'm going to use the buzzword transparent, but it's very transparent in the sense that it's not going to color my tone too much. It's not going to add in more frequencies if I don't want to, but let's hear it out. So as you can hear, that added a bit of gain. As you can see on my settings here, the drive is fairly up, but the blend isn't exactly at 100%. So it still blends in a bit of the original signal in. And then treble is a bit over halfway, and then level just so I don't clip. So as you can hear, it added a bit of hair, but without changing the bass tone. So here is a comparison again without. Then with. So as you can hear, fairly similar, just a bit more hairy. My second favorite distortion, just going to switch presets here, would be the legendary drive. This one adds a bit more color because it's got a full EQ section, no blend, so it's fully on in a way, and it has way more gain than the Scrambler. So on this preset, I'm using the A15 amps, which is British sounding, fairly bright and chimey. less gain than the previous preset, but cleans up well, and it's fairly bright. So here's the legendary drive on. Now we're in the more higher gain territory. We're almost in high gain, more modern sounds. For this specific preset, I use that overdrive for leads mostly. So if you just want to kick in as a boost when it's time to do a solo. So once again, the bass tone. And then with. That's a fairly higher gain pedal, and it covers a larger territory sound-wise, so it allows me to go from clean-ish to really, really high gain, and then perfect for leads. And then my second to last overdrive, I'm going with more and more gain every time. So my second to last drive is going to be the Horizon drive. So my bass tone is the Mandarin Rocker amp, which is a higher gain amp, but really fat sounding. Lots of bass in the sound and a lot of gain already. So what the Horizon drive is going to do with the settings I have for it is basically the attack here is pretty much a bass cut in a way. So it's going to tighten up the sound a lot. And then the drive is almost halfway. So it's not going to add too much gain because the Horizon drive in itself isn't that much of a gain pedal. It's really more a
Oh, interesting. Looks like we lost Chris there. So let's see. Maybe Chris will join in on the stream. There he is. Oh, hey. He's coming back in, everyone. No worries. We lost you for a minute there, Chris.
Yeah, so I joined back as soon as I joined back. My screen going on.
All good.
So at what part was I? I guess I was talking about the Horizon drive.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So yeah, as I was saying, I guess I'm going to start from the beginning for the pedal itself. The Horizon drive really, in that case, is used as a tone shaping pedal instead of on a gain stage that I would add. So the attack setting here is pretty much a bass cut, which is going to tighten up the sound. And then the drive is almost halfway because the Horizon drive doesn't have that much gain to it. So I still want a bit more hair, but the main purpose of it is to tighten up the sound. And then the gate is on because every time you add gain, you add noise. And the bright is at 0 because the bass tone is fairly bright in and of itself. So I didn't want to add too much there. So let's hear it again without. And then with. Then when it's going to make the most difference is when you're going to play faster, I guess, with more precise riffs. So let's say I'm going to turn the overdrive off again, and let's do some try it. Just some faster picking patterns, and you're going to hear it's going to be muddy, and you're kind of going to lose some of the definition in the riff. So. If I were to switch it back on. So here are my 3 favorite distortions. The last one is kind of it's not used in the traditional sense, so I'm going to keep that for the end, and then let's switch on maybe to Nick to see what you have.
Yeah, totally. So taking a look here, let's switch over. So good stuff, man. And, you know, several of your overdrives, especially the Horizon drive, is one that, you know, I'm really a fan of as well, just due to, you know, how many voicings you have. So I have for a more classic, you know, plexi kind of a sound, I have 3 distortions, but actually, you know, and if anyone's seen me, you know, do streams in the past, they know that even though it's not a distortion pedal, what I like to use as essentially an overdrive for, you know, more classic sounding amps would be starting off the LA2A studio compressor. And so even though this really isn't an overdrive, it can definitely add some good, you know, some good texture to your tone. So let's see what we got here. Just again, the amp I'm using is just a Brit Plexi Bright. We got the drive pushing at 8. Let's hear what we have. That's in single coils right there. Now, if I crank on this LA2A, we're going to go from this to this. We can hear I probably need to turn on that noise gate, so I turn that on, get rid of some of the noise in the input block. But you can hear how that adds a little more oomph to your sound. You know, and that's in the dynamics category, but it's essentially a compressor. I tend to add this to a lot of presets even after the cabinet, and so very versatile here, especially if you're looking for just that little extra push off the cliff. But what you notice is you don't really lose any of the low end. So that's one of my favorites. Coming into the next one is, of course, the Minotaur, which is based off of a Klon Centaur. And this thing got, you know, I'm not sure how often you've used this one, Chris, but this is like a staple for me. And, you know, it tightens up the low end pretty well. You know, if anyone has ever had the experience with a, you know, with one of the first issues of this pedal, I think, you know, the guy was just building them in his basement for the longest time before he sold the patent over. But really great sound. We go back over to humbucking mode again without any overdrive turned on. We crank on that Minotaur and now. Thing about me when it comes to overdrives is I'm not a fan of overdrives that rob you of your low end. And so, you know, this one, it does a good job on not robbing me too much of my low end. But the next one I have in store, I think kind of, you know, it doesn't take so much of the low end away. But if you're looking for something that kind of just, you know, tightens up your tone a little bit, you want to cut through the mix, maybe for a solo boost, the Minotaur is very nice. You know, it's not adding too much of a big voicing to the tone, but like I said, it kind of tightens it up a bit. But next in line, which is used by myself a lot, would be the Heir Apparent, based off an Analog Man Prince of Tone. What I love about this pedal is you have the choice of overdrive, boost, and distortion. You have the gain mod, which is either normal or higher. So, you know, when you go between overdrive and boost, there's not a huge difference, but you know, I tend to favor the boost more. But one thing I've noticed with this distortion or overdrive, whatever you want to call it, I feel like it preserves the low end of your tone. So I have it set to boost, tones at, you know, at 5, so I'm not really adding or taking anything away. Gain is at 4, and then the presence I always keep down, but you know, of course, to each their own. And then also, if I may add, the voltage. So if we go from 9 to 18 volts, just like how in the traditional world, if you have an overdrive pedal, the more the voltage sags a bit, a little more of like a crunchier low end you get, right? So I tend to keep that at 9 volts. So let's hear what we have with it off and on and moving some stuff around. So this is the heir apparent bypass. Let's crank this baby on. You know, and that's the boost setting, overdrive. So if we go from boost to overdrive, let's hear that overdrive. So, you know, obviously going from a boost to an overdrive, you're going to expect a little more grit to your tone. Let's check out this going from overdrive to distortion. Now here's distortion. So that's a little more than, you know, what I would care to add to this kind of an amp. So we can go to boost, gain modification, go back down to normal. So as you can see from this, it's a little more smoother, but I'll probably keep it on higher. And then let's see, you know, I know listening through guitar tones online like this, it's really hard to get a distinctive listen between, you know, minute changes. But if you can hear, currently we're in the 9 volt. 9 volt for the voltage. Let's hear what happens when we go over to 18 volts. Ooh, actually, that sounds pretty good. It's a little more fuzzy, if you will. You know, definitely fills out the tone a bit more. Not too shabby. So the heir apparent is probably one I use the most out of all the overdrive pedals that we model. But then again, just like how you were showing, Chris, I have that Horizon drive here, and you covered it very well. I like the attack parameter. It really makes a big difference going from 1 to 6. And so, you know, when you have 6, you have, like you were saying, there's more of like that low cut that's happening. And so if I go to the attack 1, you have a bit more of those low mids in the mix, right? And I think you had your bright turned down all the way too. Let's hear how that sounds. Yeah, you know, this overdrive or distortion is very versatile for sure. Those are really my go-tos. So we're looking at like the LA2A Studio Comp, the Minotaur, the Heir Apparent, and the Horizon drive. And then finally, really with this RevGen Purple, you know, a really popular trick with high gain amps is throwing in something, let's say like a Tube Screamer or really any other overdrive pedal to just tighten up your low end. And so a high gain amp like this has a lot of, you know, low end to offer. And so if you want to just cut through that mix a little bit, I'll throw up a Tube Screamer, a TS-808 before the amp, and you'll notice the gain is at 0. So I'm really not adding a whole lot. I'm just using this overdrive as a way to just kind of change the voicing of the amp a bit. So if we were to play a couple chuggy chords here, this is the RevGen Purple without any overdrive. Turn on that overdrive, and now it's going to tighten up that low end. So definitely, a nice modern sound, from a tube screamer, right? And so many, this isn't anything I invented or came up with. Many players of high gain amps have been using this trick for years. Again, they're not adding any gain. They're just using the overdrive pedal as a way to just tighten up the low end, cut through the mix, especially if you have, just in your band, if there's just a lot of low end happening. Maybe you have, a bass player that's, in everyone's face. This can help you kind of cut through that mix. So if you're using an amp with offering more gain than you'll ever need, keep in mind that adding an overdrive pedal and just taking that gain down all the way, can help tighten up your sound. So yeah, kind of a lot like what you were doing over there, Chris. Let's see what we got going on here in the chat. I know we've been going on for a while, but dude, Chris, good stuff, man. Let's see what we got going on here. So as we were, going back and forth with our favorites, we've had some people up in the chats, and so Paul here definitely is a big fan, in love with HX Stomp. I hope I combine with Sue. Love the sound. Thank you, Paul. Much appreciated. Let's see what else we got going on here. Here, I'll put both of us up on the screen there, Chris. And whoa, sorry, I zoomed in like crazy on that. All right, so let's see. Griffin GTR. Can anyone tell me how to split up the outputs for an HX Stomp so I can have one going to the mixer and then the other going to a monitor? Do I use left and right and just set it up for mono? Griffin, what I would recommend is, because with Helix, taking a look here at my screen, with Helix, what we can do is I could literally, let's say we have a path here, and as long as I have something on that path, I can split that path, right? And then on HX Stomp, I'd have to double check. I'm pretty sure we can do this on HX Stomp. If you look at your merge point, so this is your split point, this is your merge point. Here, I'll clean it up so it looks a little better. This is your split point. This is your merge point. So yes, you could just use the left mono out and go to front of house, let's say to the mixer, and then use the other out to go to a monitor. But if you're able to grab the merge point and put that on its own path, you could actually tell each output of both paths what you want it to be. And I think on the HX Stomp, one would be set for the output, and then one would be set for the effects loop. And so that's another way you can do it, where you can go out of the effects loop, or you could even add an effects loop block as well, where your tone will go out of your main outs and will go out of the effects loop send. So give that a look, see there, see how that works out for you. But like you said, you could always use both paths or both the left and right outputs, and you should be good. Great question there. Let's see. Jake Stewart Music. The Ratatouille also makes a great boost into a crunchy amp. Okay, all right. Gain really low, output up, and filter to taste, usually at least halfway up. Very well. And let's see. All right, that's pretty much all we have for us. Now, the Ratatouille, have you messed around much with that Ratatouille amp? Ratatouille overdrive?
I did, but not in the context that Jake would use it. I did use it as its own thing, as a standalone overdrive rather than a boost. So when the gain is more up on the Ratatouille, it becomes a bit more muddy. So if you're into music genres like grunge or garage rock or desert rock or stoner music, it's a good addition for those kind of genres. But I've never used it as a boost. So Jake, that's a great suggestion. I'm actually going to try it later on today. But yeah, and the filter is super effective. once it's up, it's rather bright, so it can be used as a tone shaping tool as well. So that's a great option.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out because growing up, it's like when you think of some of your favorite guitar players in the 80s, Warren DeMartini and stuff like that, a lot of those guys used that Proco Rat pedal. And in my times when I've played around with one personally, I was never a fan of it, just for me. But a lot of players have used it, and they sound great. But everyone sounds better than me. But I'm really curious to try it now. Hold on, let's see. So he was saying gain real low, level up at 7. That's pretty good. Filter to taste. Oh, no one could see what I'm doing. Let's go to my screen share. There we go. Let's see. Let's put this into perspective here. Let's crank on that Rat. That's actually not too bad. Actually, let's turn the filter up to let's say halfway. See, yeah, just like Jake was saying, kind of move that filter to taste, because once I'm getting up there to halfway or more, actually it sounds even better around 7. Let's turn the gain up just a hair. Let's go to 1.5 and see what we have. Now let's hear it off. Now on. You know what? That's really nice. I don't know, Chris, what you hear on your end, but it doesn't sound like it's taking away from the amp much at all.
No, and I know actually it just complements it. It's 80s rock in a nutshell.
Oh, I know. Too bad I didn't know some rat licks, literally. No pun intended, but yeah, too bad I didn't know. What is it? Some lay it, dude. I'm feeling some drop D, lay it down from Rat right now. Yeah, like you were saying, I'm probably gonna have some more fun with this later, because since I've never really dug that the Proco Rat pedal in the past, I've always just kind of skipped over the Vermin distortion and the Ratatouille distortion. The Ratatouille was a new addition to the Vermin distortion, but I think the Ratatouille, to my ears, just sounds better for sure. So, hey, Jake, where you at, man? That, yeah, right here. Pretty sure Rat into a Marshall is the Nuno Betancourt sound. Yeah, I can hear that, now that I'm messing around with it. But hell, man, Nuno could make a freaking milk jug with strings sound amazing. So I never even thought about it. So Jake, thank you so much for that. You turned us on to something that'll get us tinkering. Because I don't know about you, Chris, but I've always kind of skipped over that. But now that I'm, having fun with it, I think I'll probably start using that a little more.
Yeah, it's not something that in the regular analog world that I would have tried really, but then again, sometimes some pedals don't really work with some amps, so having that in the Helix enables us to test it with everything basically. So it leads us to little discoveries like this because of people like Jake, so we can find new things.
Yeah, totally. And I know guys like since we're talking about favorites and stuff, I know guys like Tony Campanovo, product specialist. He tends to stack distortions on top of each other as well. I personally, I've never really messed around with that. I've even seen tones where they will put, like what I'm doing here, where they'll put two different overdrives in parallel. Because obviously, if you stack distortions, it's a distortion going into a distortion. But when you do this, you kind of get two flavors at once. And so I don't have anything prepared for it, but for anyone watching, mess around, see how that sounds. You know, I could even probably, you know, we could, you know, the beauty of modeling, right? We could just constantly have some fun. So if I like the sound of one overdrive, I could literally kind of stack them like this, you know, and so keep in mind, you know, the possibilities are endless if you really want to get, you know, all nice and distorted here. Let's see how this sounds. This probably, I'm not too sure. So that doesn't sound terrible. You know, what I'm using here is the heir apparent and the horizon drive in a parallel path. Now let's see what happens if we just put one in front of the other. You see, now it sounds like one distortion in front of another where it's just too fuzzy. You know, it's starting to sound like a metal zone or something now. So, but if we put them on a parallel split like this, it's even more smoother. So keep that in mind. I know we didn't touch base on that, but I've seen this done several times. And, you know, I'm a classic kind of person, you know, when I, you know, like I'll just throw a couple effects in front of an amp and then I'm done, right? But with technology like this, you can really get into the weeds. And so that's something, you know, just to kind of shed some light on. Is that something you've ever messed around with, Chris? Have you ever, you know, stacked distortions, put them on parallel splits like this?
I actually do a lot of stacking, like Tony would, according to you. Yeah, I do. Sometimes 2 or 3 overdrives and a fuzz in front of an amp. That's something I used to do when having regular pedals as well. So it's something I did replicate on Helix on some presets. But then again, it's the beauty of being able to pretty much test any kind of combination possible. So something else that I kind of wanted to touch on is I got my preset here, which is a preset that I had used last week, 2 weeks ago with Tony. So this is the Rev Gen Red preset, and I had to throw it on pretty quick. So what I did is a little cheat that I cannot take credit for, but basically if you were to have the kinky boost in between your amp and cabinet, which is something that cannot be done in the analog world. You can't really use a pedal between your amp and speaker, but what it does in this case is it adds a lot of mids to the cab. So for me, as someone who likes mids a lot, it makes it easier for me to dial in a sound really quickly. So let's just hear the bass tone without the boost engaged. It's going to be kind of scooped. And I'm not that much of a fan of those kind of sounds. But then if you add the boost here without any drive, just put the boost on and the bright on. So it's going to make a world of difference. So let's just hear it again, the bass sound. And then with. So that's kind of a cheat that I found just from tinkering with the presets, and it enables me to create a sound way quicker than I would if I were to just mess with the cabs and mics and speaker configurations. So if I need to throw on something quick, it's a quick cheat that gets me going real fast.
Dude, that's killer. Yeah, I've never even thought of doing that. So that's awesome, man. That's, you know, another reason why I love talking shop like this is, you know, we all learn something new, right? And so, dude, that's killer. I'm definitely gonna have to try that. So while you were doing that, a couple cool little questions came up. And so first we got, is it possible to put an effect on the favorites category in Helix HX effects. I only find the option in the PC editor. Usually, well, what I know working with like HX Stomp, usually when you press action, if you press action and page over to the last page, that's where you're able to add it to favorites. So I would check that on the actual physical unit, see if you could add that into the favorites category. But if not, then that's probably only a PC editor thing. But I imagine you can on HX Effects. My apologies for not knowing that right off the top of my head. It's been a while since I'm sure Chris, you can agree, we're always on Helix or HX Stomp. We should probably do some, show some more love with the HX Effects and, probably bring a traditional amp and then mic it and all that. But definitely check whenever whenever you have a question with adding a model to copy it, move it around, create a user default, or even add it to your favorites, always press, select that block, press action, and those options would be there. So to answer your question, if it can be done, press action and see if it's if it's on one of the pages. The Swedish Chainsaw and Vital Distortion Parallel is insane for doom tones. All right. Well, thank you, Jake. We've been getting a lot of good ones from Jake today, so thank you, man. Timothy here. Sure wish you guys would do an Old Nobles ODR1 Nashville standard. Thanks to Tom. Bukovac. Yeah. Well, Timothy, that's great. That's something that, Chris and I could always mention, in our meetings. But we have this thing on line6.com called Idea Scale. And so if you're not familiar with it, just go on our website, go into the Helix area, and check out the Idea Scale. It's essentially like it's set up like a Facebook page where users can, like yourself, make recommendations, user requests, feature requests, and they get upvoted or downvoted and people comment on them. And so we live a lot on that page to add into the updates that we do. So Timothy, if you want to really send that point home, check out line6.com, our Idea Scale, and put that up there. I personally have not played with this overdrive. Have you at all by chance, Chris? Are you familiar with this?
Yes, I am. I didn't try the actual, the real ODR1, but I've played with clones because it's become really popular because of people like Tom Bukovac, who is a studio guy, pretty popular in Nashville. So I did try it. It's kind of a tube screamer with more bass. It's not really, but to give just an idea of how it sounds, that's how I would describe it. So it's a green pedal. It's a green overdrive in a way, right? So yeah, it's similar enough, but it's got a different bass character. So that's why people want it, I guess, because it does something else to the tone compared to a tube screamer.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I just did a Google search, and so it's a pedal with 3 parameters: drive, spectrum, and level. Interesting. I have, in my ventures, I haven't come across this pedal, but it looks very interesting. Curious what that spectrum does to your tone. I could, imagine a few things. But it looks like Timothy was saying here, like it looks like it's been requested on Idea Scale a bunch, and so that's how stuff gets added, right? The more people talk about it, the more, the squeakier that wheel gets. As they say, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So the squeakier that wheel gets, the more it'll be heard. And I know with Idea Scale, if you take a look on there, there's requests, that just stretch for miles on that thing. Take a look at some YouTube. I will, Timothy. That's very, very cool. I'll take a look. Great stream today because I'm learning a couple things, and that was an overdrive pedal that I just wasn't aware of. And let's see, we were talking about what that spectrum parameter does, and Ron says here, pretty sure it's a tilt EQ. Okay, so probably low cut to the left, high cut to the right, lets in more lows, vice versa. So very cool, very cool. Well, without further ado, I know we started about 2 or 3 minutes behind schedule, and it looks like we went over 13 minutes over schedule. So I think we did good. I think we covered a lot of ground. Thank you, everyone, for joining today and giving us your recommendations. Jake, Timothy, you guys definitely threw a lot of good stuff at us, and we enjoyed messing around with it. You're going to be back up a week from today with Tony next week, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Exactly. So I'll see you guys next week.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And Chris, thank you again for joining. And we'll see you all on the next stream. Have a good day.
Take care.